Hey there, this is Pete Pardo with Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to a special edition of the show today. It's Saturday, May the 27th, and we're here to unfortunately report a death in the rock community that's going to hit really hard for a lot of folks. Seems like we just did one of these recently with Chris Cornell, and today's one that's especially tough for myself. We've lost Gregg Allman, late vocalist and keyboard player from the legendary Allman Brothers Band, after a short battle with what appears to be liver cancer. Although for most who kind of been following the life of Gregg Allman, he hasn't been especially healthy in recent years. He had a bout with hepatitis C, and he had pneumonia a couple times, and it's been a struggle the last few years for him. But he's been out there touring with the solo band the last year or two, and I think for some of us who have been longtime fans, and I've been a fan of the Allman Brothers Band for most of my life since I was a kid, and when the band decided to kind of go their separate ways and call it quits a few years ago, I think most of us still held out some hopes that they would do it again at some point, right? Because that's what the Allmans always did. They always kind of did it again. And obviously that's never going to happen again now. Gregg was 69 years old. I feel like I just say this over and over again every few months when one of our heroes leaves us. It's like so many of these rock stars that at least folks, my age bracket, kind of grew up listening to and idolizing, are barely making it to 70. How many of them are living to see 67, 68, 69, maybe 70, and that's it. And there's just so few of them left. So, today was just, it's Memorial Day weekend here in the U.S., right? It's time for celebration, time for remembrance. And, today was like any other day. I mean, I had family coming over today, right? And then at I don't even remember what time it was. I think it was like 2:30, something like that. A buddy of mine sends me a text because I wasn't on Facebook, I wasn't on the internet. I was hanging out with family and just enjoying the day. And a buddy of mine sends me a text to say Gregg Allman just passed, and it was just like a hammer hit me. And I've been a huge Allman Brothers fan for so long. I've just always loved Gregg Allman. Just that golden voice, right? This guy sang amazing probably up until his death. I mean, he just had this unmistakable voice. The smoky organ tones and those Gregg Allman vocals. Just nobody like him. And so when I heard this news, I was just like, I just couldn't believe it. But it's almost like you'd expected it because we know he hasn't been healthy. There's been some serious shit going on, and so I just kind of I mentioned it. I mentioned it to my son, and he was just kind of like, he's young. He's not really sure who Gregg Allman is. I heard the Allman Brothers, of course, but and then I actually him and his girlfriend were going into the city for the rest of the weekend. And I went to drive them to the train station. And it's just so funny because as every minute went by after I found out, and then I'm in the car and I'm driving them, I'm just going to a train station about 8 miles away. And I normally take a certain route to get to the train station, which is kind of like a little shortcut, beat out all the lights and all that kind of stuff. And I wound up kind of going that way, but then not going the way I normally should have. And I wound up going a totally different way. And he was just like, which way are you going? And I was just kind of like, at first I stopped and I was like, I almost didn't know where I was. And I was just like, why am I here? And then I was just, and I, of course, I blamed it on the fact that, I'm older and I do these things every now and then. But I think the more after I dropped them off, we got to our destination, I dropped them off and I was coming back. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Gregg's death was really just hitting me hard. And I think I was kind of going through this little grieving thing, and I was just really upset. And it just, and I obviously wasn't thinking straight. So here I am driving, not even knowing where I'm going. So, long story short is that, you know, this guy just has made a huge impact on me throughout my life. And, whether it's, I remember the first, like, Allman Brothers album I ever got. It's probably the same for everybody. It was Live at the Fillmore, Whether you're a rock fan or you're a guitar player or you just like that style of music, it's like that's an album that everybody gravitated towards. And I remember the first time I ever heard Live at the Fillmore, I was like, holy crap, this is great, Blues and jazz and hard rock and just good old rock and roll and maybe a hint of this country rock thing, which we later called Southern rock, right? I mean, the Allman Brothers were basically the first Southern rock band ever. They influenced a generation of bands to follow. Would there have ever been a Skynyrd or a Marshall Tucker Band or the Outlaws or, Molly Hatchet or all these other bands were it not 38 Special, were it not for the Allman Brothers? But again, they weren't your typical Southern rock band by any means, long instrumental passages, mixing blues and jazz and, all sorts of things, a little bit of gospel, a little bit of soul, lots of rock and roll. I mean, just, and then you had, to start it off, you had Duane Allman and Dickie Betts, one of the best guitar duos of all time. And then Gregg Allman, Duane's younger brother, who had this amazing voice, Here's this white guy from the South who sounds, like an African-American blues singer, soul singer. And just, and it's amazing having organ playing, right? Also pretty damn good guitar player in his own right, but left that up to his brother and Dickie. Band went through all these changes, and we know Duane passed away and Barry Oakley passed away, both within a year from each other, both in motorcycle accidents, right at the same place, on the same road, right? Band carried on. As the 70s wore on, the band kind of splintered apart. Gregg got involved in, drugs and what have you, and married Cher and, all this kind of crazy stuff. But the band actually wound up getting back together in the late 80s and going through most of the 90s as a force to be reckoned with once again, with Warren Haynes on co-lead guitar alongside Dickie. Dickie eventually was kicked out of the band due to his own demons. In comes Derek Trucks, one of the greatest slide guitar players ever since Duane, obviously. And the band was just doing amazing things into the early 2000s. I mean, the last studio album the band ever did was called One Way Out. Fantastic album. And I remember, like, when that album came out, I was like, this is one of the best things the band ever did. I hope they do more. Sadly, they never did another studio album after that. Lots of live albums, though, And, I want to make mention, it's just kind of weird that this just came out recently, and now Gregg passes today. But the Allman Brothers Band, the Fox Box, live at the Fox Theater, Atlanta, Georgia. 3 shows from September 2004. I reviewed this on the site. I reviewed this on the YouTube show here. Probably one of the strongest live albums ever to be released from this band. It's 8 CDs. It's 3 full shows. Hardly a song is repeated on the entire set, and it's spectacular. And again, Gregg was in fantastic form here. Granted, it was this was 13 years ago, but I saw them up until a couple years ago, and he always sounded great. And the funny thing is, it's not funny. It's just everybody lives with regrets, right? And the one thing now, especially today, I regretted at the time. It's not so much I regret it, I didn't have the opportunity. But, the Allman Brothers announced that they were going to retire, and they played like 2, 3, 4 weeks, I don't even remember how long it was, straight at the Beacon, right? Tickets went on sale, and, because of the way fucking Ticketmaster is, and the people who scalp, and the people who buy up tons of tickets and then sell them on StubHub and all that, whatever the nonsense is that's the ticket buying situation these days. A lot of people who, wanted to go see the Allmans didn't get a chance. I couldn't get a ticket to save my life unless I wanted to pay like $500 or $1,000 a ticket to buy them on StubHub for those folks who scooped up like 30 tickets or whatever. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So here I was, if I didn't go every year to see the Allmans at the Beacon Theater, I would go every other year, every 3 years or whatever. So I saw them, not that last tour, obviously, but I think the tour before and the tour before that. So I got to see them, but, I would have loved to see them the last run at the Beacon, at least once. And I was shut out. It was just impossible to get tickets. And I was pissed off about it for a while after that, and now I'm like, I should have done whatever I could to try and go get. But you never know. You never know how, because I always felt in my heart, in my mind, that it's the Allmans. They'll come back they'll take a break. They'll come back after a couple of years. They'll convince Warren and Derek to come back, and then they'll do it again. Maybe they'll reunite. They'll get Dickie back, and they'll do this whole big extravaganza. We'll never know, will we? And now that's it. It's done. And Butch Trucks passed away a couple months ago. So here we have two original members of the Allmans gone within a couple of months from each other. So not to belabor the point here, but you look at all the albums. The first album, Idlewild South, Eat a Peach. I've got them all listed. Seven Turns was that big album that they came back with in the early 90s, 1990. Shades of Two Worlds, Where It All Begins, all the live albums, Brothers and Sisters. It's an uncanny discography of just great material. And I'm just right now, I'm having a hard time coming to grips with the fact that that Gregg Allman's no longer with us. I really am. It's just, this is not a guy who, maybe 15, 20 years ago was really slipping and people are like, he needs to hang it up. I mean, no. Gregg Allman was still singing his ass off up until now, recently, right? And he more than holding his own on stage with the band or with his solo act, and just, and I've seen the band live so many times, and I've just been mesmerized by this guy forever. I even just watched on Access TV recently, like a tribute to Gregg Allman, where he took part in, obviously, but all these guys that he's played with, or younger musicians who have idolized him, like Zach Brown, all these other folks, got up and played Allman Brothers songs. He came on and joined them, and it was just like this really cool thing. And I literally just watched that like 2-3 weeks ago. So, Greg, I know you're up there with your brother right now, and with Barry, and with Butch, and with everybody else. Yeah, this hurts a lot. A truly influential musician in my life. I'm a guitar player, but I appreciated Greg for all sorts of other things, and world is not a better place without you, my friend. So here's to you. Gregg Allman leaves us way too young at the age of 69, and rest in peace, my friend. I will be listening to Allman Brothers music for the foreseeable future, and this is Pete Pardo with Sea of Tranquility, and we will see you soon. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.